John, if information or education is the enemy, are our academic institutions failing us in the science departments?
Absolutely. The whole academic situation is a disaster in my view. I wrote a paper called The Power of Energy. Do we have that out here today? That was one of those. Well, anyways, it's online on my website. I think our academic institutions have absolutely been targeted to go backwards and to be instead of science oriented. In other words, our science curriculum is being made more and more phased down and made less important, and other things that are whatever. The whole business of grading is an example of something that I find very annoying. When I was in high school, as an example, back around the Civil War, there was maybe, let's say 100 kids, certainly less than 10 got a 90 or above here. Well, today, out of 100 kids, probably 50 get 90 or above. Well, are there that many more smart kids today? I don't think so. This has all been, standards have been changed. They've effectively been relaxed because of issues like self-esteem that are being promoted. Say, well, everybody ought to get a pat in the back no matter if they don't even do anything other than show up. Well, I personally don't believe in that message. I think that's sending the wrong message to people. It's saying, effectively, to children, you don't have to work, you're going to get rewarded no matter what you do. Now, what sort of a citizen is that going to be produced as an adult that says they are going to get rewarded no matter what they do? Well, that's in a person who's expecting and looking for entitlements. And lo and behold, what do we have? We have people left and right all over the place that are looking for, expecting, demanding entitlements. Well, I don't think that's a good thing, but I think a lot of it does start with the schools, and our academic situation here is not good. One little aside, somebody sent me a YouTube video several years ago, and what it was an interview with a person who was a former Soviet intelligence agent who defected from Russia at that time, I guess it was. So he was being interviewed by some national TV people, and they asked him, they said, all right, so what is the Soviet Union's plan here now to beat out the United States? Are they still working on stealing military secrets and things of that nature and stuff like that? And the guy said, no, not really. He said, well, they still do some of that stuff, but that's not their primary focus. And he said, well, what is their primary focus? And he said, your primary focus is to corrupt the United States from within. And they said they specifically targeted academic professors as being people that would be sympathetic targets to send out messages to students, educate students, about things that ultimately would destroy the society. Well, one of these things is environmentalism, this whole business of wind energy. Ordinarily, a sensible person would say, why are we doing something that we abandoned 200 years ago? Is there some big new thing here about this? Well, the answer is no. They're bigger, but no, they're not better per se of any degree of consequence. They still have the same inherent physical limitations. So we're going to spend maybe $1 trillion on something that's stupid, polite way of saying it. So if our competing, our enemies, or our competitions, let's put it that way, sees us wasting $1 trillion of our money plus the time and effort in something that's stupid, that couldn't be any better for them. That's great. That's just exactly what they'd like us to do. So they don't have to have any war here with us. We can put ourselves in a bankrupt situation. Oh no, by the way, who we owe this money to? Oh, China, our competitor. So this is something that's pretty scary. I don't know if that answers your question. But,
yeah, it does.
Okay, next question.
John,
Chris.
you showed 40 municipalities in New York State that have essentially zoned out wind power.
Yes.
Maine has been somewhat successful also. We're approaching 20 towns now. Just last night, the town of Rumford, which has been under a real siege for the last year at least, had their selectmen put out a unanimous report to the people that hopefully they'll vote on it this November, that will impose restrictions on wind that effectively tell them to go someplace else.
That's
It's
good.
not a ban, but effectively they said that you're not gonna be able to operate here.
Okay, good.
When we field calls occasionally at Friendly Maine Mountains from some town that says, hey, there's a wind developer pawing at the earth here. They're talking to selectmen, they've talked to a few landowners. I've looked into it a little bit, I've seen your information, and I'm terrified. This looks like a bad deal, but everybody seems to be on board with it. What can I do? And we try to arm them with resources. They don't have money. Oftentimes the developer is 6 months into it with tons of money and PR firms. They've got lawyers and engineers on the ground, and they're very persuasive with all of the above. Yet, one person or one small group of small people feels powerless in the face of that sort of an onslaught. What do you tell them?
You asked me to go through what I did the other night?
You're gonna make us, I know.
Yes. You want me to explain this to these people? I mean, you said, I'll explain this again. Okay, thank you. That was a loaded question, I'm sure. No, not really. I'm just being facetious here. Essentially the question is this: how much can one person do, right? Isn't that what he's basically asking? Okay, well, I'm gonna give you an example. It's gonna take a couple minutes, but I think this is applicable to everyone here. This is a real life, real world example. I get hundreds of emails a day, literally, and these people are asking for advice, just like Chris said, what do I do? And so here's an example, a story, a real world story about a person, an individual in the state of Idaho, which has some similarities to Maine. So to start with, we have to realize that we're in a war here, effectively. So the question is, how does a force of 100 people stand a chance against a force of 1,000? Well, the answer is, take the higher ground. That's a military tactic. Take and hold the high ground. And as well, of course, use effective strategies on top of holding the high ground. So, what is the high ground here? Well, in my view, the high ground is science. So here's what happened. This person, here's her qualifications. An Idaho housewife, had no technical background, no four-year college degree, has 4 children, has a job, no anti-wind organization like there are numerous ones here, no anti-wind internet site, no financial support, a shy and reserved person who's uncomfortable with public speaking, and she just started this year, so relatively recently. So with these type of qualifications, how much influence can this one person have against what's going on in her government and state here? Well, when she said to me, what do I do? Just like Chris said, basically my answer is the same to everybody. Get educated and speak up at the appropriate time in the proper manner. So what get educated means is to carefully study this presentation we just went through, which is online, and to watch these Jane Talks Energy videos, which are on my website, plus some of the other key articles on wind power facts, that info, and very importantly, memorize what not to say. And I say, look, when you're doing this, you've got to stay focused and stick to the script. Well, some people are real good at this, some people aren't. So it's just a point of reference here. Idaho has 147 megawatts of wind energy compared to Maine's 175. So area-wise, all that kind of stuff, Idaho is fairly rural, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of similarities between Idaho and Maine. Obviously, Maine has better water access, ocean. Okay, so the first thing that she did was, this was like maybe a couple months, as I said, she started in January, maybe in March. She'd been reading the stuff that I told her to do, trying to get up to speed. So in March, she tells me the governor is coming nearby, so like 20 miles away, to a nearby community to have a press conference. And the the newspaper said he was gonna be accompanied by the head of the energy, state energy office. So she said, I'm so unhappy with what's going on here, I think I ought to go and talk to this guy, the governor, what do you think? I said, well, here I'm 1,000 miles away, what can I say? Obviously, we need to speak up, so I said, sure, go for it. Well, she said, I can't do that, I can't stand up in front of all these people and do that. I said, well, that's up to you, depends how committed you are, whether you really wanna get this solved or not. So finally she said, all right, fine, I've hardly slept at all, being concerned about this, but I'm gonna go. So she did go to this meeting, and she did stand up. And one of the interesting things she told me, she said, I was literally petrified before I got up here. And when I asked my first question, and I got what I would say is a pretty dumb answer from the governor, all of a sudden the light came on in my head that I knew more about this stuff than he did. She said, wow, that was really sort of revealing, and that sort of emboldened me. So she ended up standing up, chewing out the governor and his number one guy here for like at least 15 minutes while the TVs were running. So I went online on my own, she didn't know this, and checked out to see what there was written, because there were stories written about it, and then I found one section that had AP photos of this event, and lo and behold, here she was in a picture. The governor is sitting there on the left, and the energy guy, the guy happened to be standing up, but the governor sat down after she lambasted him so much. He sat down, and the other guy sort of popped up to come to his defense. So here she was. That's her really right there, saying basically this from the script of what not to say, that Idaho's policies are not science-based, and how come? What's this crap all about? Blah, 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 blah. Well, what happened is that she got on the 6 o'clock news throughout the state here. There were several newspaper articles that talked about her and things she said. The governor's office subsequently contacted her, called her up and said, here's some of the information you asked for, blah, blah, blah. And then even went as far as to ask her opinion, say, well, what do you think we ought to do about this? Or who should we consult here? Several citizens contacted her and thanked her for speaking out. And she was all of a sudden now perceived as an expert. This housewife with 4 kids, a job, blah, 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 blah. There you go. So the next thing that happened, and this was because she stayed focused, in my opinion. She did a good job of doing what she should have done. She didn't get distracted. They tried to get her off topic, but she didn't allow them to. That's a key thing. She took control of it. So subsequently, around that time, maybe within the next month here, AWA, the national lobbyist group here, had made a major pitch to the state legislatures to give wind developers in Idaho additional perks, financial perks here. And for instance, one of the biggies was to extend sales tax rebates on all wind-related items. So Idaho's anti-wind group, think about 6 people. 6 people in the whole state are fighting this. 6 people. 1/3 of what's in this room here. The entire state. One of the guys was a well-connected guy, a former state senator, been a state senator for like 20 years or something. So he knew everybody, most everybody in the legislature. So he was very much against this whole wind business, and he was very much against this bill here. So he made some calls to some of his buddies and the players and said, what do we need to do to put the kibosh to this? And he said, he was told, don't waste your time. It's a done deal. We've already come to an agreement here. It's done. Well, he said, I don't like to hear that. So he solicited this woman to say, you did such a good job speaking out against the governor. How about going to the legislators here and make a pitch to them? Well, she said, what the hell you mean? Who am I to stand up in front of these legislators? But she agreed to do it. So what happened was that she had to drive 300 miles. She went with this guy, 300 miles, the two of them went. He had to show her where to go and